大家好，我是 Lingua Legend 的 Jack。这个影片我们已经上传了中文和英文的字幕，所以看影片之前要记得开字幕哦。
I just did a video with Amazing Talker about the culture of wearing shoes inside. Why is it that it seems so many Americans wear their shoes inside the house? Is it really true? Well, I knew from my personal experience that it is very common for Americans to wear shoes inside, but I actually didn't really know the reason why or where this comes from. So I decided to do a little bit of research, and here's what I found out.
First of all, it's important to remember that the things that we see on TV and in movies are not really an accurate reflection of what people do in everyday life. I think most people, when they get home, they want to be comfortable and they take off their shoes. Of course, when you are filming for TV or movies, you have to save time when you do multiple takes. So they can't afford for their actors to just keep taking off and putting on their shoes again and again. But here's the very interesting thing. When it comes to having people over to our houses, I think most people will actually keep their shoes on when they visit someone's house. Why on earth would they do that? I mean, in most cultures, that would be considered very disrespectful. But I think in American culture, it can be more respectful. We even have this phrase in English, kick off your shoes. And it kind of is an invitation for the person to relax, be informal. So in American culture, keeping your shoes on actually might be the more respectful or formal thing to do. However, it depends on the house. Some families do take off their shoes and they ask their guests to take off their shoes too. If you live in the northern parts of the United States where they get a lot of rain and snow, then your shoes have a good chance of being wet or muddy and they need to come off. But what about those families that really do wear their shoes right past the door, inside the house, and maybe into the bedroom? Where does that tradition come from? Could it be cultural heritage? Just as many Asian American families have a strong tradition still of taking off their shoes, there are apparently some cultures that leave their shoes on. The most definite examples I could find were Ireland and Spain. Now, if you're from either of those places or you've lived there before, you can confirm in the comments. But I think there are a lot of practical reasons too. For example, a lot of Americans like to wear boots, especially the kind of cowboy boots that are like a tall leather boot, not like regular shoes that you tie up with laces. They are made to fit your feet and they fit pretty tightly. A lot of people use a special tool to get them on and off. It's called a boot jack. And without that tool, they have to actually sit down to put on or take off their boots. If you're from a desert climate, there's an additional reason. Apparently, you need to check your shoes for snakes or spiders. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had the chance of finding something deadly inside of my shoe, I would probably just leave it on all the time. That would explain why a country like Australia also leaves their shoes on inside. So what about those families that do wear their shoes inside? I mean, do they still think of it as dirty? Do they clean their floors more often? Well, here I think there's an interesting cultural difference. Let me explain. I think a lot of Americans consider nature to be clean. So if you went walking in the park or you walked on some grass, we would probably think your shoes are pretty clean. We seem to make this separation between city dirt and nature. So when you consider that a lot of Americans live in suburbs, which is something between city and country, keep in mind suburbs have low population density, not a lot of people, and they also have a lot of grass and parks and things like that. A lot of those people would probably think of their shoes as pretty clean. Here are a couple final reasons why some Americans may wear their shoes inside. The first is it could be safer for older people. And I can understand this. In the case of my own grandparents, some of them do wear shoes inside. But the thing is, they have a specific pair of shoes for inside. They don't wear those shoes outside. The last and final reason is that yes, some Americans would be considered dirty in other cultures' perspective. They just don't have the same separation between outside germs and their home. They might keep their home neat and tidy, but if you considered how many germs are in the home, it's pretty dirty. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's interesting talking about different cultural practices, isn't it? There will be more of these videos coming up in the future. If you have any ideas you'd like to suggest, you can leave them in the comment section below. Also, share your opinion about the matter. Do you take your shoes off? Do you ask your guests to take their shoes off? Why or why not? Oh, but what about Americans wearing their shoes on the bed? Is that really a thing? No! Even Americans who wear their shoes inside don't wear their shoes on the bed. Don't believe everything that you see on TV or in movies.